We haven't been able to figure out whether this show is broadcast in Trinidad, but if Nicki Manaj's cousin's friend is watching, or his former fiance is watching, we want to hear your story. We're coming to Port of Spain to see you. Let us know.
Well, at least they got Tucker Carlson to defend a black woman.
And happy Saturday, and welcome to The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Saturday, September 18th, 2021. Again, I say it every week. Time is flying. I cannot believe it's September. But it is. And one good thing about September is it starts to get cooler. Football is on. And, people start to get excited about the holidays and stuff. Obviously, last year we had no holiday season because of COVID. This year, I don't know what it's going to be like. I still don't anticipate we're going to be back to normal. But hopefully people are getting vaccinated and will be able to see their families. But like we always do, I have Val Atkinson here. Hey, Val.
Hello, Ed. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Welcome back to The Deal. There is so much to talk about, like we have every week. I'm going to just jump right into it because I know you've been really worried about this because your favorite rapper, Nicki Manaj, is in a bit of hot water with some people in the public. Joy Reid and Nicki have been having a running battle over some comments she made. She said that her cousin's brother, niece, nephew, uncle, wife, sister, mother, said that your testicles might swell if you get the COVID vaccine, and you may not be able to have children. It's funny. That's funny. And then on top of it, the person's in Trinidad and not even in America. And I went to look to see how many people have been vaccinated in Trinidad, and across the Caribbean, the number is very low for a lot of different reasons. So the funny part, let's talk about that first, that people pay attention to people like Nicki Minaj when they're talking about this, but the serious part, that there are still people dying from COVID. Val.
Yes. You know, the thing that got me that was also funny, Ed, was that when Dr. Fauci was asked what he thought about Nicki Minaj's statement about testicle swelling. And he said, I have one word for it. He said, I think it's nuts. And I couldn't resist that. I said, Dr. Fauci, we didn't know you was a stand-up. But he was obviously talking about the craziness of the whole idea, how silly it was. And we've got to stop letting people like Nicki take over the narrative for this serious thing. She should be ignored. I know Joy has to do what she has to do and pointing out certain things. But I get concerned sometimes when we give platforms and ink and space to people that shouldn't be getting it. And in many cases, we could contain this craziness in their sphere of communications. Those people, but we use same platforms like CNN, MSNBC, and CNN to help spread that silliness throughout the rest of the same universe. And I'm saying we should not be helping them out in that way. We call it news, we call it whatever. And I know MSNBC, CNN, they have to keep their ratings up and so forth. But you are helping these crazies when you do that because they have a smaller sphere than you think. Because just because you got 1.5 million followers, those are the same people that follow somebody else that's got 200,000. The same people that follow somebody else. I mean, this thing is not as big as you think it is. It's impactful.
Right.
There's no question about that because we have some young folks that listen to Nicki only, and they don't listen to Joy. or they don't listen to
or Val.
yeah, or Ed or whatever, and so we have to be careful about that. But I thought it was funny that Fauci said he thought it was nuts.
Yeah, that was a good one. I'll wait for the rim shot, right? Yeah, boom. But on a serious note about COVID, the numbers still are atrocious of people dying and getting it, and more radio talk show hosts on the right dying from it. And you would think that would make a difference. Just a story. I won't divulge too much information so nobody would know this person, but there is a person that I've had a work history with who refuses to get the vaccine. He's been vociferous about how it's a conspiracy and so on and so forth. He is in intensive care this morning on a ventilator and doesn't look good at all. And I know people who have died from COVID. I know people who currently have COVID, like the story I just told. And this can be beat back if people just do the right thing. Had we done the masking early on, we could have beat this back. And then we still got these idiots in governors like DeSantis and Abbott who are still fighting so that children don't have to wear masks. The last piece of this, Val, this week, Madison Cawthorn, who is unfortunately a representative in Congress for the state of North Carolina, was in Johnston County, and I got a little bit of video of that.
The congressman represents the Asheville area, but he was out here today. He told me he was invited by parent organizers to drum up support and continue the conversation around and against masking. He participated in a short walk from a nearby restaurant to Johnson County School Board headquarters with parents here in Smithfield before the meeting tonight. A new law signed by the governor in the last few weeks requires school boards to vote monthly.
So, Val, Congressperson Cawthorn was in Johnston County to try to promote not allowing a mask mandate in Johnston County School. Number one, he doesn't represent the district, right? There's congressional representation for Johnston County, and it's not him. And then he comes with these group of people, and then you have people getting up to speak against wearing masks in schools. What does Madison expect to gain? Does he think his political future is going to rise? He already has problems. He's already talked about armed revolution against the country, and now he's coming to places like Johnson County to talk about not allowing mask mandates. What is his deal?
Cawthorn is about 26 years old. We've all got to think back to our state of mind when we were that young and younger, because he's immature. So he may be biologically 26, but as far as maturation is concerned, he could be less than 21. But the point is, he's doing all of this for his future gravitas in the Republican Party. He wants to be, if not the top of the ticket, at least considered for VP in 2024. He wants to take the place of a lot of other Republicans who are deciding to go the sane route. He sees a place for him in the Republican Party. Any GOP representative who wants to try to have access to the youth of the party and the new youth, it would be a good idea to go through him, they think, because of his youth. So he's doing all of this stuff on a personal level. And when you start thinking personal stuff like Donald Trump does, it doesn't matter how you do it or what you do. He probably never even thought about what district he was going into, what the other congressman wanted or didn't want. He may have talked with them or whatever, but this guy is so hung up on power and being important in the Republican Party that he's willing to do almost anything. Let me take one point of perspective. I got a call from my bank. I won't tell you which one, yesterday. And they were just calling in general saying, you did a transaction at the bank and we want to call to see how you like things and how did the teller treat you and so forth and so on. And I told him, I says, well, I was concerned that, there was a guy in the line next to me that didn't have a mask on. Well, I didn't see any sign on your door. What's your policy about wearing masks? And they said, well, based on the town that we are operating our business in doesn't require businesses to mandate masks. I said, okay, they don't require that. So that's on you to ask for your customers to wear masks or not, because the town has said they're not going to require it. They didn't say you can't ask for it. And we went around and around for a long time, him trying to put the blame on the town. And then sometimes he put the blame on his corporate headquarters. He wanted to accept no blame at all. But the bottom line was, Ed, he didn't want to get rid of that business of people who were anti-mask wearers and needed some place to park their money and make transactions and do business. And it's a rather conservative community that he serves. And he was making it from that point. So I told him, well, I will be considering changing banks. And you'll be the first one that I'll call when I make my decision. Well, and I've made my decision already. I'm leaving that bank.
Well, I know he hates he made that call. But you know what? Before we move on from this, because we got so much more to talk about. But that's again how we could stop this whole thing is if people would stop being mealy-mouthed and just say, "You're not coming into my business. We're not going to deal with you." That we talked a little bit about the mask mandates that Joe Biden, is saying that businesses have to start doing that have a more than 100 people in the federal government, in the military, so on and so forth. That is the only way that we're going to beat this back is to have vaccine in mask mandates. You're watching The Deal. I'm Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. We started out today talking about Val's favorite rapper, Nicki Manaj. And that led us to our COVID discussion this week, because I don't think we can go a week without talking about it. I do want to shift gears dramatically, though, Val, and go overseas to Afghanistan. And we've talked about Afghanistan the last couple of programs. We won't talk as much in detail this week, but one revelation is that the drone strike that was highly touted as trying to help stop violence against the troops as they were, trying to get out of Afghanistan, accidentally hit the wrong folks. So I got a clip real quick from this Department of Defense where they acknowledge that.
The findings of the investigation and the supporting analysis by interagency partners, I am now convinced that as many as 10 civilians, including up to 7 children, were tragically killed in that strike. Moreover, we now assess that it is unlikely that the vehicle and those who died were associated with ISIS-K or were a direct threat to U.S. forces.
So, Val, we made a mistake. We hit a car and killed about 10 civilians, including probably some children. That is the kind of damage that I think you talk about before. That how we have killed all these innocent Afghans and Iraqis or whatever, and we kind of dismiss it all the time. We get fixated on the 13 American service members, which we should be concerned about, but we have constantly been killing civilians in Afghanistan and places like that. Put that into context for me. This latest incident, obviously, after the 13 soldiers were killed, we were concerned that more of this violence could happen. So they targeted certain people to try to make sure nobody else got killed. But you see the collateral damage from that.
Well, this is a piece in the argument for people who don't like drones in the first place and think they have no place on the battlefield, because there are going to be there are going to continue to be mistakes of this nature. There were 7 children that died in this strike, 7 out of the 10 people that were killed. And they're saying that it was a Toyota Corolla, which is one of the more popular vehicles being used in Afghanistan at this time. And they made a mistake. Well, that's not going to bring people back. You've got to do something about the policy that allows people in Kansas City to push a button and kill people anywhere on the planet. You know, this is Star Wars on steroids. We've got to watch what we're doing and where we're going with this, because if we let this drone program go too far, it changes everything. It becomes Hitler 2.0. It's bad. It is something we really need to take a look at. And I don't think the whole business of claiming American exceptionalism and claiming that we are on the side of right and freedom is going to work in this case. You're not going to talk it away when you start killing innocent people and children because you made a mistake.
Yeah, mistake is probably an understatement here. You know, those lives cannot be recovered. They're not coming back. And we've made that kind of mistake over and over again. I will contend we made that mistake all the way back to removal of Native Americans from their lands because we brought disease to them like smallpox and all that and wiped out whole civilizations of folks in our quest to expand America. So this is nothing new for us. We have a rich history of killing other folks for our benefit and it not affecting Americans directly because the average American, they can wash their hands of it. They didn't see it. Like you said, some guy in Kansas is pushing a button to launch a missile all the way across the world, just like people were giving out blankets that had smallpox on it that killed Native Americans. The average American can say, well, I didn't own slaves and I didn't kill the Indians. I wasn't fighting them directly. So Val, we have some problems here. And obviously this is not over. You know what? I hear some music. So that means that what we need to do is take a break. And when we come back, I need for you to talk about your 2 favorite people of all time, Mitch McConnell and Joe Manchin, because there's going to be a problem, Val, with getting a budget through and getting the debt ceiling raised and reconciliation and all that other stuff. So everybody sit right there. We'll be back in a minute. You're watching The Deal.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes. You can do it here. But I get it, you're busy, and busy people can't have prediabetes. I read that wrong. They can, okay? Just go to the site.
I'm young, I'm healthy.
There's no reason for me to get the vaccine.
But some of my friends got sick.
And then my close friend died.
And then it got real.
You think it can't happen to you?
But it can.
If you get the virus,
You'll try to catch your breath.
and wonder why you thought you were so special.
The virus is real.
And it's killing people who look just like us.
Get the shot. Seriously.
Get the shot.
On this, we have a lot of issues to work through, but we're working through them, and everybody is focused on the idea that we have to get something done here. We have to get something done here for the country. So we're going to keep that process going. You know, if we tallied up all of the times in which this Build Back Better agenda that President Biden has put forward was declared dead in the public and in the press, then we would have a long, long list. We continue to keep our head down, keep moving, and we are making progress here.
And welcome back to our second segment of The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. We started off talking about Nicki Manaj. When we were gone from the break, Val was in the background dancing to Nicki's latest tune. We talked about Afghanistan in the first segment as well. I want to turn our attention to Joe Biden in his Build Back Better. And if it's going to be able to build back coming back from the break, you saw a White House spokesman talking about negotiations vow with Senator Joe Manchin. Now, we frequently talked about Joe Manchin. I don't know if I talked about Joe Manchin at all in 2019 and before. And I think since then, I think I talk about him every week to everybody because he has been such a big figure. Talk to me about Joe Manchin and his refusal to even contemplate the $3.5 billion that Joe Biden is talking about. Where does that leave us if he doesn't come along? And you heard the White House say that they're negotiating with him. What kind of deal can you negotiate with a Joe Manchin?
Well, I'm going to get to that, but let me say one thing first before we talk about that, Ed. To answer the question, how did Joe Manchin get to be Joe Manchin? And it came about that Joe Manchin was one of the first persons that saw that with a 50-50 Senate, if you had one Democrat that refused to go along, everything stops up. And that one senator could, in fact, with his refusals, could run the Democratic Party and in essence run the Senate and maybe the government of the United States. That's a lot of power. So he stepped forward and says, no, I can't deal with this. And we rushed in to say, okay, what do you need, Mr. Mann? What can we do to get you beat to do this and do it right? And now we've given him the power, we've given him the gavel, we've given him the authority to run the United States Senate. Chuck Schumer has to consult with him. Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi has to make room for a fourth leg on this triangular stool. There's a fourth leg on the triangle. And it's called Joe Manchin. He's stopping everything. Everybody has to check with him. And now to talk about the power that he has and what they're looking for, Joe Manchin doesn't really care. In the beginning, he said no to 3.5 trillion. He said it's going to be closer to something like 1 or 1.5 trillion. And when pressed to define what that entails, what can you get for that amount of money, what needs to be taken out, he was very evasive. He didn't want to talk about it in great detail. All he wanted to be the guy who defined what it is. You'll say, okay, let's make it 1.75 trillion, and you guys go figure out where it's going to go. I'll set the number. Who are you, Mr. Manchin? You're not the president pro tem of the Senate. You're not the Senate majority leader. You're not Speaker of the House. You definitely are not the president. Who are you to have all of this power from a state that only has 3 electoral college votes after this next round of reapportionment? Who are you to do this? Well, he was the guy that we talk about, Ed, when I mentioned how to become a good drum major. You find you a successful parade, run real fast and get in front of the parade and call yourself the drum major. And he saw that clearly. He saw what was going on with the 50-50 split right after the Georgia special elections. And he said, I'm going to run in front and I'm going to be leading this thing. And he's done it. I'm sorry to go off in that way.
Oh, no, that's precisely.
That's how we got to be where we are with Joe Manchin.
Right. So let's triangulate your other favorite person into this, Mitch McConnell. McConnell comes out on, I think the clip I saw was on Thursday, and when he has the other Republican leaders from the Senate with him, and they standing behind him, he says, under no uncertain terms, is he going to be allowing any Republican to support any plan? So that means, the best you could do is 51-50. That's provided that there is this compromise that's made and something can be put on the table. What do the Democrats not understand about the Republicans? It seems to me that they keep talking about not all Democrats, but not enough of them have gone the other direction. But the ones who stay on this position that we're going to compromise and that we're going to do something bipartisan. What the hell is that? Well, I mean, it gives me a headache every time I hear a Democrat talk about, being bipartisan. You're fond of saying that, you're not going to influence the little old lady sitting in Des Moines to change their mind. And you're right. So who the hell are we going to try to do something bipartisan with, especially in light of what Mitch McConnell's saying?
Well, you're not, Ed. And what Mitch McConnell is saying is that he runs the GOP Senate. And what Democrats don't understand or fail to believe is that there is a price to pay for a Republican senator to go against Mitch McConnell and side with the Democrats for whatever purpose. And that price is that they will probably be primaried. A verb, meaning you will have a challenger in the primary and you will not win the primary if the whole GOP goes against you. You'll not win it and your political career will be over. So why are some Democrats thinking that it's 1970 all over again and we can get this bipartisanship through compromise and so forth, and we can pull a senator from here and a senator from there? And they haven't realized that Mitch McConnell has put his stake in the ground. He says it's a new day. It's a new sheriff in town, guys. I tell these 50 people who to vote for, what to vote for, and when to cast that vote. He does it. And Democrats haven't caught on yet that McConnell is not going to let any of his people side with us because we only have 50. And the filibuster is still in effect. So the minority runs the Senate right now. If the filibuster is still in effect and you need 67 senators, you're not going to get 17 guys, on the other side to come along with you.
Well, Val, one of the good things about having a internet podcast is that you can curse. So I'm going to say that this is bullshit. That the Republicans have used their power, even when they have a similar, very slim majority, without having any qualms at all. And that's why you have 3 people being appointed by Donald Trump to the Supreme Court, because they had no qualms at all that this would come back to bite them later on, because they know the Democrats will never use that same kind of tactic, or at least they hope the Democrats will never come around and use that same kind of tactic. That's why you can get the almost $3 trillion tax cut for the rich, and the Republicans go stand on the lawn at the White House with the president, and the president, can get all the things he wanted. That past president could get all the things they wanted, because Mitch McConnell and none of them in the Republican caucus will ever do anything bipartisan, unless it has to do with war, unless it would be something that would force Americans to take sides and pretend like they're patriotic, which, last week was the anniversary of 9/11. And of course, everybody talks about how we came together around 9/11. The country did not come together around 9/11. There were some events and stuff right early on because people were in shock, I think. But the country has always been divided. I don't know of any time, Val, when we actually lived in Mayberry. The town maybe felt like Mayberry, but the people there were still racist. You still had people who, did, all kind of bad things. America is fond of this exceptionalism argument. And I want to talk about this just real quick before we move on to the next topic. But I happened to see this comedian from South Africa last night. And he said that, he came to the United States. It was first time. He's all excited. And he happened to be here election night when Donald Trump won. And he was at this election party. He said, number one, he didn't get the whole thing of having these election parties, and he stood there and saw these people crying and whatever. And he said it was clear to him that Donald Trump was not qualified to be president. He's from South Africa. He knew from the outset that this was a bad thing and this was going to end poorly for the United States. And he was like, how can America claim to be exceptional and elect people like Donald Trump? And he recorded this, obviously we're in the middle of COVID. He says, we got it bad with COVID in South Africa. He said, but I'm at a comedy club in South Africa because we followed the rules. They can't even follow the rules in the United States. Everybody's so individualistic. You talk about this a lot, Val, about the individualism of Americans. Is that part of the problem here? Is that, we have bought into this false exceptionalism thing, and we're too individualistic to pay attention to politics in the way we should. So when you're getting snookered by somebody like Mitch McConnell, you don't pay attention because you think there's something in it for you. If Mitch McConnell, says we're going to get a tax cut, you think you're going to get a tax cut, but you're really not going to get it. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Absolutely, Ed. The individualism is in my mind almost at the top, as for the reason that we are not fighting the COVID battle as effectively as we should at this time. America started off with individualism and freedom and liberty, but it was against the British. The Constitution that was written in 1787 had no idea or purpose for individualism for people of color. It wasn't written for that. So now that people of color are saying, hey, it means me too, there are some people who are saying, no, it don't. It doesn't mean you too. I am a strict individualist and I know what it means. And you're changing my culture because I'm not a racist. I believe in the racial caste system, but I'm not a racist. I don't know how you get that way. I'll have to go confront Isabel Wilkerson with her book Caste to find out how you do that. But they've managed a way to take these things and be individualistic. And that's the reason, Ed, the background reason I'm getting to, why people say, I don't want to wear a mask. They know that wearing a mask is going to protect them and others, but they are fighting for their choice, their right to say no to things, their right to stand within 3 feet of you instead of 6, their right not to wear a mask, their right not to get vaccinated, their right to do all of these things, and they dare you to try to take away that right from them, even if it means your death or the death of someone you love. So you have to come at them with this understanding that these people are fighting for their total individualism in the face of death. So you can't threaten them with death. You can't threaten them with anything because they're willing to die. I heard one lady in Mississippi say, well, I'm a Christian, and if I die of COVID, I'm going to heaven. So it doesn't matter to me what we do. You're not going to take away my individualism to wear a mask or get vaccinated, because I'm going to go to heaven if I die. There's no need in talking to this individual, trying to bring them around. You might as well come up with a different kind of strategy. I like the one that you talked about earlier, Ed, to tell people, if you don't want to wear a mask, that's fine. If you don't want to get vaccinated, that's up to you. But you will be tested regularly if you're not already vaccinated. And if you don't want to wear a mask, you can't come into this facility. You can't participate in this activity over here. This is the way it is. So you make the choice as to whether you want to be vaccinated or wear a mask. But these are the things you can and cannot do based on the choice you make.
Yeah. We're going to have to do something like that because this individualism streak, I think is actually, it's not. I don't even think it's individualism. I think it's selfishness. But to that point, and this will lead us up into the break and take us into our main subject today, which is redistricting. There are some clowns in DC again today, Val. They're calling it Justice for J6 or some nonsense like that. Which so supposedly these folks are going to go to DC, and I'm monitoring the feed right now, so we may have some video when we come back from the break, saying that the people who were arrested for the January 6th were just happened to be there. They were nice people, you know, but they were just protesting, and that the Justice Department is treating them unequally and unfairly. We know that people died on January 6th. And then one of the people that died was Miss Babbitt, who was trying to crawl through the window in the house there, and she was shot. And if you're going to say that it wasn't justified, I don't know how you square that when you got people trying to bang down the door of, you know, the house there, and they were saying stuff like hang Mike Pence and so on and so forth. We know what that story is, right? So Val, when we get back from the break, I want to, you know, maybe frame a little more of where these people are coming from, but how that plays into the Republicans knowing that they don't have the majority. They don't have enough people on their side. How do they maintain control? One of those ways to maintain control is through redistricting. And one of those ways is to do primaries and making sure their candidate, who's the furthest to the right, the ones who are supported by the nuts that are in DC today and were there on January the 6th, end up being the Republican standard bearers, right? Because they win the primaries and stuff. So with that, stay right there. We'll be back in a minute and we'll talk some more about redistricting, the nut cases in DC and the California recount.
Thousands of families affected by disasters urgently need support. You can help the American Red Cross provide help and hope to families when they need it most. Please donate today to Red Cross Disaster Relief to help people affected by disasters big and small. Go to redcross.org or call 1-800-RED-CROSS today. Your support is critical. We can't do it without you.
As I said about kind of the media blowing this thing out of proportion probably ahead of it happening, I just for context, like, you know, I see organizers of, you know, a handful of participants, like the guy who I just photographed there in front of the Capitol, but for the most part, this is media, right? Like, I'm going to, like, in a second, I'm going to take kind of a wide of, like, the rest of the park here, and for the most part, like, what you're going to see is press, right? Like, this is journalists who showed up to.
And welcome back to The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. This is the third and final segment of The Deal for today. We've covered a lot of ground like we always do. COVID, Nicki Manaj, Afghanistan, Mitch McConnell, Joe Manchin, the White House negotiations on reconciliation. And we left me on my street against the crazy protesters in DC, Val. You saw some video coming in of the crowd of the people in DC. Is nowhere near a massive crowd, but you know, nonetheless, they're still there. And the way we ended up, Val, I was talking about this whole notion of how the Republicans know they can't win fair and square. They got to cheat, and I'll start with one of the cheats that they tried last week, which was the recall of Gavin Newsom in California. California, for better or worse, has a method of recalling the governor that I think is insane, and they probably need to reevaluate. But the Republicans have used it to effect. They were able to get rid of a governor before and put in Arnold Schwarzenegger. This time they tried to replace Gavin Newsom and Larry Elder, one of those poor colored people who get in bed with the Republicans and find out on their deathbed that the Republicans never cared about them at all, a la Herman Cain, right? Or you can go down the list, Alan Keyes or whoever else, right? They're useful idiots for the right. So let's talk about California real quick. Why did that fail? And the Republicans, knowing that they got to do something, we know they're passing all this legislation, then redistricting on top of that, for them to stay in power. So start in California.
Well, California was a bad choice for the Republicans. California is one of the bluer states in the nation. And it was going to be difficult, if not impossible, to get enough. First of all, their first strategy is to keep enough Democrats from the polls. Second strategy is to confuse some of those who do decide to show up. And then thirdly is to run out a, as you call them, colored man, to have those people who vote based on race and race alone to cast the wrong kind of vote. That he's a black guy, I'd love to see a black governor. We've never had a black governor before, so I'm going to vote for Larry Elder. All those things failed. And the true nature of California came forth, and Newsom won in a landslide. And it got so bad that even Elder was quoted as throwing Trump under the bus when he was asked by Trump and Trump supporters to not concede the election and to call it a fraud. And he refused to do that. But it was too late. The die had been cast, and he lost in a big landslide. And that's basically the way it's going to be in states like California, in places like New York, and coming more and more in play are places like Georgia. And that's why they are so afraid, because of the big number of Hispanic and African-American voters.
Well, so talk to me then about Texas and Alabama, Mississippi, all those places where they do have control and they can make an effort. So they've been passing these legislative efforts. Talk to me about the legislative efforts and then how that rolls into the redistricting that's going to have to go on.
Well, the legislative effort comes from way back when Barack Obama was elected president, and when the 2010 census said, and some demographers guesstimated that by the year 2042, whites would no longer be in the majority in this country. They put all those things together and says, we don't have space in our tent for colored voters because it's a win-lose situation. For every black or brown voter you bring in, you are apt to lose a white voter that is in the Republican Party just because he's running away from the black and brown vote. So they can't do that. So the only option left was to keep people who normally vote against them from voting. And thereby came the draconian voter suppression legislation. And in several states that you mentioned have this legislation, plus more. I think the last count, it was around 47 states that had passed voter suppression legislation to keep people that, mainly people of color, but people who normally vote Democratic, from voting with ease. And they're going to try to do that, and they're going to have an easier time of it maybe when it comes time for redistricting.
Mm-hmm. And so what's going to happen with redistricting, I think, Val, is, and we've seen it before, is that the Republicans, they know they can't blatantly draw things based on race, but it looks like the Supreme Court has already said, well, don't do it on race, you could do it on politics, though. And that's problematic because, Republican, I'm in control, I'm going to draw districts in my favor. All we have to do is look to North Carolina, where we are today recording this, is we know that Republicans are not the majority in the state of North Carolina, but they by far represent the state in the congressional delegation, and they also overrepresent in other places. One of the things that I fear, Val, is obviously they feel like they have carte blanche, so they're going to put together districts that just don't make any sense to begin with, hoping that they have friends in the Supreme Court that won't touch it, right? Because we let that go. So it goes all the way back to our discussion of Mitch McConnell earlier. McConnell, for the last 25 years, has said that his focus was going to be on the court because they know that's where it is. If you got a law and you can't enforce a law for civil rights because the court doesn't support you on it, then you're good. And that's what's kind of happened here is that the Republicans know they're good because I got Amy Coney Barrett and Gorsuch and, I don't, Kavanaugh, I don't have to worry. Now, Roberts has shown that he doesn't buy into all of this, but by himself, doesn't matter. Clarence Thomas and Alito are still there with the other two. So you have no way ever to win. It's always going to be 5-4 or 6-3, right? Which brings us to a discussion that we've had before, is the Democrats also sitting on the fence about not expanding the court, about not doing, getting rid of the filibuster, not doing all these other things that, like we talked about in the second segment, the Republicans have no qualms at all about doing it. They will do it and they don't care. They're going to continue to do it. And until somebody gets some guts, maybe they need to have some bigger balls like Nicki Manaj was talking about earlier. Somebody's got to grow a pair and fight them head on. Who is doing that, Val? Is there anybody at all on the national stage? Because Joe Biden's not doing it. He's still talking about bipartisanship. He hasn't let Kamala Harris be, an attack dog or anything. Who's talking about it?
Nobody. And they've really embraced the 1970s political strategy of compromise and bipartisanship. Those are days gone by and they are not coming back. What the Republicans have done, they've come to the realization that they cannot win in a multiracial democracy. They can't win. So they've decided that they want to alter it or even destroy it and build back something that's going to be better than what they have now. They can't win under these certain conditions. And we are steadily trying to, be cool, be calm. Let's go by the rules and regulations. Let's be good boys and girls. And they're saying, no, I'm trying to destroy it. They don't realize, too many Democrats don't realize that the Republicans have a path, a strategy on the way, and they're on the path to destroy democracy as we have known it. Because they can't win with the rules as we have known them going forward. They don't have the numbers to do that. I want to say one thing before I move on about redistricting that's really misunderstood sometimes. That is what the courts really said about the 1965 Voting Rights Act. That really made it easy. It's going to make it easy for Republicans to redistrict the way they want to this time. What they didn't come in and say that Section 5 was the boogeyman and had to go. But Section 5 is the one that allows for pre-clearance to be exercised, okay? They attacked Section 4. And they said Section 4 was unconstitutional. What Section 4 is the section that describes who comes under the auspices of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. And it's based on a 1964 calculation that says if 50% of your people were not registered, or if 50% of the registered people did not turn out to vote, then in fact, you came under the auspices of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. This hit hard for Southern states that were about the business of keeping Black people from voting. And that's how you got on that list. What the Supreme Court said is that that doesn't work today. Maybe some of those states shouldn't be on there anymore. Maybe some states that ain't on there should be on there. So this is what the Supreme Court said. What I'm directing the Congress to do is rewrite Section 4 so it is relevant and inclusive of what's going on today. So as of right now, Section 4 doesn't exist. So now the Republicans come in and say, hey, if we have no mechanism to determine who comes under the auspices of this law, this act, then it doesn't work. It doesn't have any teeth. There is no thing such as preclearance. Section 5 can't be implemented if there's no Section 4. Okay.
Yeah.
So we need to understand that that's how it works. So it means that Congress has the authority, based on what the Supreme Court said, to go in and rewrite Section 4 if they want to. But you first of all got to get control of Congress.
Right. You have to have enough so you can pass
and with
pass
this
the legislation.
With this new redistricting coming up, and I said a long time ago, if the Republicans don't take control of the House in the 118th Congress, it's because they ain't trying.
Yeah.
Because they are going to draw the lines. They already have a very slim deficit right now. They're going to draw the lines, and it's going to be drawn in such a way that they will have the majority. They'll win, and they should have the majority. They should take back the House. So I've always said that the Democrats should be about the business of putting all their eggs in the basket of the U.S. Senate. That is playing defense. Because if they have the House and a 50-50 Senate, or if they get back the House and the Senate, we're in so much trouble, you can't even quantify it.
Yeah, and the other thing, Val, is to pass as much shit as you can now, so that they should have been from the first day when everybody got sworn in. They should have been getting everything they could on the table and pass. Well, this is going to be a hard one, Val, because redistricting, I think, is going to have a bigger impact than anybody can ever imagine. Again, you're down to about 30% of the people ruling the other 70%.
Yeah.
And those kind of civilizations, guess what happens to those? They ultimately collapse.
They don't make it.
South Africa is an example. You got this minority forcing people, the abortion laws in Texas are a prime example. The how they're going about, fighting mask mandates and vaccine mandates. All that stuff is indicative of a minority viewpoint overly influencing the majority, and those civilizations collapse. I hate to tell Americans this, but America didn't exist at one point, and it won't exist at another point. There is I don't know what that date is, Val, and I'm not saying that it's right around the corner, but it could happen, because the last thing I want to talk about today is your buddy Donald Trump scared the generals so bad that they had to reach out to China because they were afraid that Donald Trump was going to start a war over losing the election. Talk to me real quick about that story and what we need to know about that.
Mark Milley, who is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, did something heroic in my mind when he got on the horn and talked to his counterparts in Beijing, China, to make them aware that they need not worry. There will be no unannounced attack on them or anybody else, and we will not start World War III. We will not allow Donald Trump to unilaterally start World War III. I think he did a great job. But the right has convinced the media to portray this as the question of whether or not it was treasonous on the part of Milley to do something like that. He in my mind, he was a hero to stop that from happening. And he did the right thing. He followed procedure. And that's something most of these right-wingers don't know. Most of them have never been in the military to understand how things like that work. The military, if they ain't about contingency planning, they're about nothing. There's always been a contingency plan for everything. And this is something that these guys had in mind to do long before the Donald Trump. And it just may have gotten spiked up just a little bit because of the antics of Donald Trump. Yeah. But these are things that the military has been about for a long, long time. That's why you have the football. That's why you have launch codes. That's why you have all these protections in place so that one rogue person, be it the president of the United States or someone else, can't go in and willy-nilly start World War III.
Yeah, we cannot have that. Hey, Val, guess what? We're about out of time. So I'm going to ask you, like I always do every week, and what we got to look forward to in the coming week.
Well, what we got to look forward to is on the 21st. The 21st of September is when Bob Woodward's new book and Robert Costa's new book called Peril is going to be out for shipment. That's September the 21st in hardback. And I highly recommend that to take a look at what we've just been talking about. General Milley and what happened with his contacts and with his running up to the line of maybe going close to World War III. It's a great book, as I understand it. And I recommend that people on the 21st, go out and take a copy of that in your favorite platform, whether or not it's Kindle or hard copy or whatever. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, I pre-ordered
find out what's happening.
Yeah, I pre-ordered it. So the other thing, Val, is that tomorrow, the 19th, is another edition of Connections. What's going on Connections tomorrow?
Well, Connections, we have some guy named Ed Clark and our analyst and contributor, Irv Jonah. And we're talking about some of the things that we've talked about here, with Irv Jonah giving a good overview of redistricting. We didn't have time to get into all of it today. And we touched on many of the subjects here. So that'll be on at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning on Foxy 107, 104. You can go online and look through Radio 1, which is a part of Urban One, and listen to it online. You can save it, record it, listen to it at some other time, or listen to it live tomorrow morning at 8 a.m.
Yeah, and if you have TuneIn app on your phone, you can, if you have TuneIn Premium, you can always, just schedule it, even record Connections. So I recommend that you, or at least consider it, and catch us every other Sunday on Connections. Well, Val, that's going to do it. We want you to go out and do something good for somebody today. I'm talking about all of you guys out there. Go do something good for somebody today, and then we'll see you back here next Saturday. You've been watching the deal. Bye.
We're cold. We're cold. We're cold. We're cold. We're cold.
We haven't been able to figure out whether this show is broadcast in Trinidad, but if Nicki Manaj's cousin's friend is watching, or his former fiance is watching, we want to hear your story. We'll come to Port of Spain to see you. Let us know.
Well, at least it got Tucker Carlson to defend a black woman.